It's great to welcome back to the program today Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna, who represents California's 17th district. It's great to have you back on. And the last time you were on was before the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So I think maybe we would start there. Weeks ago, there were reports, seemingly credible reports, that Russia sort of had the resources for about another 10 days of what they started with. It's obviously been more than 10 days, and what's taking place on the ground has shifted to some degree. What's your outlook now, based on what you've been briefed on that you can talk about what the longevity of this might potentially be?
Well, I don't underestimate the Russians. In fact, Charles Lester had sent me an article. He's a expert on what Russia did in Syria, just reminding us how brutal Russia can be. And they spent almost a decade in Syria. What they did in Aleppo, what they're doing now to cities in Ukraine, and they've had the same record in Georgia. So I admire and support unconditionally the Ukrainian resistance, but I don't think we should be rose-eyed in terms of how difficult this is going to be and how ruthless Russia is.
There are some, including to some degree Noam Chomsky and others, who have focused on what they see as the futility of resistance against the overwhelming power of Russia, and that Ukraine should essentially give Russia some stuff and try to end hostilities as quickly as possible. Not a perspective that many others, there are many others who very much disagree with that perspective. What's your sense of what Ukraine should be doing?
Well, my job as an American lawmaker is to support Ukraine and to make sure we're providing them with military weapons, which we are, make sure that they're getting the resources that they need, make sure that President Zelensky has the unconditional support of the United States. I think the president has done a tremendous job with Secretary Blinken in rallying NATO. I have called out countries like India, because I'm the vice chair of the India caucus, saying we've got to be unified in condemning Putin. But I also have said that we have to, at the end of the day, have a negotiated settlement. And the United States should be working towards to do whatever we can for that. But strengthening Ukraine and having this resistance succeed, I think, is one step to that, because it weakens Putin's hand. And Putin has to be in a weak position to even accept some compromise. I mean, Zelensky has floated compromises. He has said he's open to seeing even not even being neutral in certain cases. But Putin is the one, as my understanding, isn't coming to the table.
In terms of U.S. troops on the ground, Joe Biden from the beginning said that that's not something that he's willing to do. And there's significant support for that, but not total support for that red line. What's your position on boots on the ground?
No, and the president has been correct. He has been wise. He's been restrained. He has done everything he can to support the Ukrainian people, but not get us into a war with Russia. I don't think anyone in America would want that, especially when you have got Putin making terribly concerning statements about using nuclear weapons against Great Britain. I mean, the last thing we want to do is to get into a world war.
Two different things that are touchy, to say the least. And if there's anything you can tell us about them, it would be great. One is increased speculation, including after a recent video, that Vladimir Putin is ill, looking swollen, gripping a table, just very unhealthy appearance, and lots of speculation about that as a possible factor in his actions. On the other hand, speculation that there has, without a doubt, intelligence experts are paid to provide all options to elected officials, and that it would be unusual that the question of could Putin be assassinated would not have come up. Not that anyone's planning to do it, but that this is what intelligence people are paid to do, provide every option. Can you weigh in at all on either of those two things?
Well, I'm certainly not privy to any knowledge that isn't out there in the American public. So I guess first I would just say that it would be absolutely wrong and is not the United States policy, should not be the United States policy to try to assassinate sitting head of state of another country.
Mm-hmm.
And I would vigorously oppose something like that. And it's nothing that I have heard of being planned. And I don't think in any way is the policy of this administration. The second point about Putin's health, I mean, I've read about the same speculation, but I don't think that can inform a policy. We have to be governed by the basic facts of what we can confirm, and that is that we need to continue to help the Ukrainian people have as tough a resistance as possible, with the hopes that when Putin is sufficiently pushed back, that we can have a negotiated settlement.
Last question on this. Do you, aside from what would be acceptable responses to it, where it's a different question, do you agree with the perspective that a NATO expansion could legitimately be seen as a form of aggression by Putin?
I don't think that that is the cause of this war. I think that the cause of this war is what Putin himself has written, that he wanted to see Ukraine be part of Russia, and that he views Ukraine historically as part of Russia, and that is his own words, his own rationale. So we can put aside whether the question on NATO expansion and how much to expand NATO and what that implication has for U.S. security and U.S.-Russia relations, but I don't think it is any way the proximate cause of this war.
Okay, so kind of on that note and into this next topic, there are some on Twitter and in sort of lefty media circles that have sort of turned on you in the last 6 months. And the idea being Ro Khanna isn't progressive enough. He's too friendly with big tech. He's not willing to say something like, for example, no, listen, I mean, NATO expansion, if we had something equivalent going on our southern border with a coalition involving other countries, we would absolutely see it as aggression, even if it's not the proximate cause. Do you believe that the criticisms of you are fair? Do you feel like you've changed in some way over the last 6 to 12 months, that there's more sort of like anti-Ro Khanna sentiment happening in some of the usual places on the internet?
I don't know. Do you think there is? I don't. I haven't sensed it. I know we had a big disagreement with, I think, Max Blumenthal, because I basically support the president's policy on Ukraine, and there have been people who've been critical that I haven't had sort of moral equivalence between America and Russia, but I don't see that. I think Putin is a dictator who is violating territorial sovereignty and is clearly in the wrong here, and that he has to be resisted. And I know there's some people who are more sympathetic to Putin's perspective and Max Blumenthal's perspective. I just philosophically disagree with that, strongly disagree with that, and I'm much more on Joe Biden's side than Max Blumenthal's side. And I guess maybe that has led to some progressives being upset. And I guess the only other thing I've noticed that some folks are upset is that I'm speaking with Senator Manchin about trying to get a climate deal. Look, I've been for the boldest vision on climate. I chaired the big oil hearings. I've exposed a lot of their disinformation for the last 40 years. But I care so much about the climate that I want to get something done before the midterms. And, you know, if talking to Senator Manchin is unacceptable, then basically people are saying, let's throw up our hands and not get a climate deal. That's not acceptable to me.
Yeah, it seems to be this debate that's not new about pragmatism versus idealism, which is, it seems, in doing some research before talking to you today, that some of the disappointment, for lack of a better term, is that some feel that what was previously a much stronger alignment with someone like Bernie Sanders has shifted into being much more accepting of the status quo. And maybe the Manchin stuff is being perceived by some as being too accepting of the status quo, whereas it sounds like you see it as being a realist and a pragmatist, because that's who you have to negotiate with and work with right now.
Yeah, and I've always been a pragmatic progressive. I've always been a progressive capitalist. I used to get criticized when I was on Bernie's campaign as a co-chair. People saying, oh, why are you making this argument about how Bernie is an FDR and actually a progressive capitalist? And why are you not being more confrontational? But I guess I haven't changed. I think people's maybe perceptions or they're getting to know who I really am, and that is someone who believes in Medicare for all and has fought for it, free public college and has fought for it, canceling student loans. I was just out in a rally and actually publishing an op-ed in the Post tomorrow on it. Someone who's fought on Yemen against wars overseas, but also someone who believes in innovation, believes in entrepreneurship, believes that ultimately you do have value in a free enterprise system if it can be fair with healthcare and education for everyone. And someone who's pragmatic, who wants to take the progressive movement and say, okay, we got to now get to the 50% mark so that we can get policy done. It doesn't just want messaging. So I think describing me as a pragmatic progressive, as someone who is 100% committed to the policies, but more of a coalition building, a little bit more aspirational, would be accurate. And that may not be appeal to everyone. No politician can. But it is who I am, and I would say it's been consistent in how I have been since I've been in Congress.
So let's talk about 2022. You and your 434 colleagues are up for re-election, as is always the case every 2 years. We also have some important governor's races. A third of the Senate is up for re-election. Elizabeth Warren recently wrote a piece where she says it's really not looking good for Democrats. I tend to agree. I am particularly worried because I look at some of these races. For example, Monday in the Pennsylvania Senate race, to pick one.
Yeah.
There was the Democratic debate where you have John Fetterman and Connor Lamb and Malcolm Kenyatta and a woman whose last name I believe is Khalil, but I don't remember right now, on the Democratic side. On the Republican side, you had this television doctor, Mehmet Oz, as well as Dave McCormick and others. In looking at it, I love Fetterman on policy. His debate was, I would call it, disastrous in terms of presentation. And when I look at
it, I didn't follow it. I mean, I know all the Bernie folks like him there.
I like him on policy, but when I looked at the 5 Republicans, some of whom are bonkers, I mean, they're out of this world nuts. It looks like any of the 5 would do better in debates against the 4 Democrats that are running. And my concern...
What did Fetterman do badly? What do I need to learn for the future?
He seemed disoriented, to be perfectly frank. He seemed unprepared and confused at different times. It was weird. I mean, I would recommend that you watch it. But the greater point, given that you didn't watch that in particular, is I'm very worried that as terrible and dangerous as some of the Republican candidates are, that the Democratic Party is just not prepared for what may be coming in November, and that it's going to be absolutely brutal. I mean, what's your outlook on the way it's looking right now?
It's a tough election, and I think there are 2 things we need to do. One, what Elizabeth Warren has said, forgive the student loan, pass something on climate to excite her own base. But I think it's beyond that, David. And I don't know if everyone will agree with me, but here's what I think. You know, I was born in Philadelphia in 1976, our bicentenary. I still believe this is the greatest country in the world. There are millions of people who want to come to America and not go to China. I think Democrats have to start with that. And then we need to say there's a problem. Half this country was deindustrialized. The jobs were shipped to China, they were shipped to Mexico, and 50% of this country isn't participating in the wealth generation and producing things, while districts like mine have wealth piling up and have been benefiting from globalization. So we understand why people are angry. We understand why they keep voting folks out. But we have a concrete plan to bring good jobs, to have reindustrialization, to bring economic prosperity to these communities. And we're going to start to do it concretely, just like Bobby Kennedy did in Bedford-Stuyvesant in 1964, bringing business, community, labor together and actually showing results. And I think we've got to, if we lead with that economic message of economic revitalization, look at the numbers today with the GDP going down in the quarter. It's all because we're importing things. It's all because of the trade deficit. Why can't the Democratic Party become the party of reindustrialization, economic revitalization? That, to me, is not just a winning message, it's a true message, and it gives us the best shot in, I think, winning back some of these places.
Well, two thoughts on that. One, it's notably missing from the discussion about reindustrializing and bringing supply chains back home. And both Republicans and Democrats talk about it. We're going to do Made in the USA. Trump says it at every rally. Joe Biden's been saying it. It's missing from that will make products significantly more expensive. And as an economy over 30 years, cumulatively, the U.S. has opted for cheaper stuff that's produced outside the country. We kind of have to deal with the reality that everything would be much more expensive if we brought all supply chains back home, wouldn't we?
Not necessarily, David. Look, I mean, well, there are 2 points. I mean, yes, it may be more expensive instead of having everything be made by slave labor conditions
Yeah.
in China and cheap imports. But the other possibility is that we just massively increase productivity in this country. We massively increase our capacity to industrialize and grow. And that's what we haven't done. You know, yeah, Trump talks about it, but he's not actually articulating a industrial policy of actually having the government be providing purchase agreements and loans in a massive scale with private industry to bring production back. And I think Biden, we were doing it with the Competes Act, Intel putting $20 billion in Ohio, but we could be doing a lot more. So are you saying if there are 2 alternatives, which is, okay, get all of the cheap imports from China with slave labor. Yeah, that's always going to be cheaper than building productive capacity in the United States. But building more productivity and productive capacity in the United States can also be de-inflationary. It'll be less de-inflationary than just offshoring to China. But I would argue that most Americans would pick the route of increasing our productivity instead of importing from China, both for national security reasons and because of moral reasons of having dignity of basic how workers are treated.
So last thing on this and for today, on the economic message. I recently watched a great Netflix docuseries about Bobby Kennedy, and the economic message worked extraordinarily well in his campaign cut too short, right, in his era. He wasn't up against a Republican Party that had very successfully weaponized imaginary cultural issues, critical race theory, textbooks, Dr. Seuss, Disney, all these different things, the woke mind virus and all of these things. It's not feeling like the economic message is smothering these culture battles that the right has created and is fighting. So what should be done? I just don't see the message getting through.
Well, it has to be an economic message linked with American patriotism, linked with a hope and belief in the American story. When I've gone to places like Paintsville, Kentucky, Beckley, West Virginia, Galesburg, Illinois, in places like the west side of Chicago, where manufacturing is left, black manufacturing is left, and I talk about my story, my hope of America, and my view that communities need to have the economic opportunity for like kids in my district have. Now, it tends to break through. Now, I will grant this. I'm relatively unknown, and so I haven't had millions of dollars spent against me, making me a boogeyman. And maybe if I did, it would be harder than being relatively unknown. But even people who have more baggage, I think if you show up to these communities, if you actually are delivering something in these communities, and if you start with, I believe in America, I believe we're a good, decent people, I believe we are going to remain the greatest country in the world. Just every Democrat may want to start if they believe it. I mean, with that paragraph. And I think it puts people at ease. Right now, I think so many people are wondering whether we are judging them. You know, there was a focus group in Pennsylvania. They said Republicans are crazy, Democrats are preaching. We have to get a sense where we can connect with people and say, look, we have a real vision, and all those other things are distractions. That's not going to help your kids get a better life. It's not going to help us beat China. We have a real plan, and we got to hammer that, talk about that again and again and again, and not get sidetracked as they're trying to have us be. Do I think it can work? I do. Am I 100% confident? No. I mean, that's why they have elections.
Yeah, no. And the difficulty is when those other issues are meant to make people afraid, that's the basis of reactionary politics. It can be hard for the sober but positive economic message to shine through. But I think that's exactly the challenge that you're talking about. Congressman Ro Khanna from California, 17th District. Always great speaking with you.
Thank you. Always enjoy it.